Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to finally share another oil painting video with you. This time I'll be walking you through the process behind my latest painting of a scene in Switzerland. It's been a little while since I posted a larger oil painting piece, so I'm really glad to be back and sharing this one with you all. This painting took me quite a long time to finish, about 8 months in total, but not because I was working on it the whole time. Life got kind of in the way in a big way because I graduated. I took a break from YouTube to focus on my thesis, which ended up involving quite a lot of painting and artwork. If you're curious, I've been posting some of that work over on my Instagram. But now that my thesis is done and life has calmed down a bit, I'm so happy to be back painting just for fun and sharing the process. This piece is based on a photo I took during a hike in Switzerland a while back. I genuinely cannot describe how beautiful this place was. It was one of the most breathtaking hikes I've ever done. The view of the lake was absolutely gorgeous, and I wanted to try and capture even a fraction of that in this painting. Honestly, that's what I love the most about painting landscapes. It gives me a way to create a visual memory, not just of how a place looked, but how it felt. Photos are great, but painting lets me heighten the colors, emphasize the atmosphere, and bring out the emotions I experienced in that moment. This is actually one of the largest oil paintings I think I've ever shared on this channel, and working at that scale was a really nice challenge. I started the way I usually do, with a brown underpainting and a loose sketch of the main forms. I didn't spend too much time detailing the shadows in this stage. I've learned over time that I tend to paint over most of the underpainting pretty quickly anyway, so it's more efficient for me to just keep it simple and get into the colors sooner. Once I had the composition mapped out, I began blocking in the basic color zones. The overall base of the painting is divided into broad bands of greens and blues. I started in the background with the lake in the sky, using more cerulean blue for those areas. Then I moved on to the mountains, which lean more towards an ultramarine blue. One of the earliest art lessons that stuck with me, and maybe you've heard this too, is that distant objects tend to shift towards cooler tones because of atmospheric perspective. As mountains fade into the distance, their colors get filtered through the atmosphere and often appear bluish, even if they're actually green or brown up close. I kept that in mind as I layered the mountain ranges, trying to create that sense of depth and distance with using blue. Moving into the foreground, I began layering in shades of green. To keep the illusion of depth, I mixed more blue and white into the greens in the background, making them more muted. As I moved forward, I increased the saturation, adding more vivid greens and touches of yellow. If you've seen some of my other videos, you probably know I love using bold, saturated colors in my landscapes. I find the world to be such a vibrant place, and I really enjoy reflecting and sometimes exaggerating that in my art. The rocks in this painting gave me a great opportunity to add contrast. They're some of the only areas where dark tones meet pure white, especially where the water runs over them. Against the dominant greens and blues of the scene, the rocks really stand out. I painted them from dark to light, starting with Payne's gray and building up gradually to lighter tones. I never use pure black in my landscapes. Payne's gray has this softer, cooler undertone that feels more natural and atmospheric. It's a subtle difference, but to me, it makes a big impact on the overall feel. For this piece, I used linseed oil to thin my paints. I've experimented with other mediums in the past, but I appreciated the relatively quick drying time with linseed oil. Most layers were touch dry within a day or two, which made it pretty easy to come back and add layers bit by bit over several months. Even though this painting stretched out over a really long period of time, I tried to stay relaxed and not get too caught up in perfection. I don't consider myself a hyper-realistic painter, so I kept things loose, especially in the background and the middle ground. The mountains and land around the lake were blocked in with a limited palette of greens, browns, and touches of blue, without getting lost in the tiny details. Something I did that was a little bit different this time around was that I worked with a gray mixing palette instead of my usual white one. I used to think that the gray palette trend was kind of overhyped, but I actually found it really helpful. It made it much easier to judge color values accurately, especially when working with subtler tones. I'm planning to talk a bit more about this in an upcoming gouache video, so if you're curious about that, stay tuned. As I transitioned into the foreground, I swapped out my larger flat brushes for smaller ones. The grassy area at the front gave me a bit of trouble. I went through a few different techniques to try and get the right texture. At first, I used a flat brush to suggest texture with overlapping tones, but it started to look a little too messy. Eventually, I brought in a liner brush to add in finer grass lines and leaves, which helped clean things up and bring a little bit more clarity. One of my favorite parts about this painting was adding the little wildflowers. During my hike, I was amazed by how much color there was at that elevation, despite being too high up for trees. There were so many vibrant yellow, blue, and purple flowers thriving in the alpine environment. I tried to reflect that with small pops of color throughout the grassy areas, just enough to suggest the little blossoms and add a little bit more richness to the scene. As I wrap up this video, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here and for your support. I'm incredibly close to hitting 5,000 subscribers, which is super wild. I started this channel years ago just to share what I was making for fun, and it means the world to see this little community grow over time. I have lots more painting content planned and a few videos already in the works, so if you're enjoying this kind of thing, I'd love for you to stick around. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this oil painting time lapse, and I'll see you in the next one really soon.